there, my name is Cynthia Veronica and welcome to my channel. So how do you lose weight fast without diet or exercise? So let's just get to it, colonics. So hear me out. Once I started to do colonics on a consistent basis, I started to actually feel the difference and I learned so much along the way. So how does getting a colonic actually help you lose weight and fast? It's not just the waste that comes out of you from doing the actual procedure, which by the way, it's a lot, especially in the first couple of sessions, but it's actually, there's more to it. A lot of people think, oh, it's because you're eliminating a lot of the waste from your colon through the procedure, but it's actually doing a lot more than that. It's actually changing your blood chemistry. And so it ended up cutting a lot of cravings. It ended up making me not even be so hungry as I normally would throughout the day. Normally I'd snack and I would crave certain foods, especially processed foods, but it really helps to cut down on your cravings, your hunger, and it really helps to modify what you're intaking, and also it makes it so that you're not really so hungry throughout the day. So the owner of the colonic clinic that I went to actually told me that this would happen, and I actually didn't really even believe her. But once it started to happen, especially after the very first procedure, I was completely blown away. And the owner of the clinic told me that she herself would crave things like noodles and rice and, junk food. And when she herself started doing, colonics and consistently, a lot of those cravings went away and she actually lost a lot of weight. So for me, it actually happened right away. After my first colonic, I actually thought I was going to be completely starving. All I had eaten was, I think it was just a banana about an hour before and nothing much else before that particular day. And I think I maybe even had a little bit of yogurt. And so when the procedure was done, I walked out of there and I thought, I'm definitely gonna be hungry, but I wasn't hungry at all. I ended up going to the store and buying some probiotics and a little bit of coconut water and just drank that. And that was enough to fill me up, just the coconut water alone. And so I was really surprised at how it helped right away to cut cravings, not just that day, but even, days after. And that's something that's really unusual for me. So what is a colonic? A colonic is basically a procedure that you can do to clean out your colon, or basically clean out the waste that's just sitting in your colon. And so basically what you do is you end up lying down on this plastic angled bed frame. I'm not sure what it's called, but that's basically how I can best describe it. You basically undress from the waist down, and then you sit on this, sort of plastic bed frame, and your bottom, your butt basically needs to be sitting on top of this area that has an opening. And that opening is basically where the irrigation system is located. So they basically take a tube, and the tube, luckily the lady that I went to is very skilled at placing the tube where it needs to be. It doesn't go in very far and it doesn't hurt when she places it in there. And then to the side of the bed frame, there's actually all of these nozzles and tubes. She turned on the nozzle and the water ended up flowing through the tube and basically into the tube that is sitting basically inside your colon. And the nice thing is she had actually had the water going on for a little bit, so the water was coming out warm. It wasn't cold water that was shooting up. And it also was a slow pressure. During my first session, she started off with a lower pressure, and then as the session went on, she was able to adjust it to where I was comfortable. And then in subsequent sessions, she knew which pressure to use for me, because by then we had figured out the optimal pressure setting. So you're basically just sitting there waiting for, all this water to go in and for your colon to fill up as, much as you can stand it. And then, once you're ready, or once you get the urge, you start to push. And so the water ends up coming out and into that opening. And then when it does, it ends up flowing out and you can see the waste that was in you flowing into a plastic clear tube. So the kind of interesting thing about it is that you can actually see, when you turn your head, all of the waste that's coming out of you through this plastic tube. So even though it's kind of neat because you can see, the color, the consistency, the amount that's going out, the lady is also seeing the same thing, and she's not just seeing it, but she's smelling everything, and she's talking to you. So I would say that's just sort of the awkward thing. The very first session, she's there with you for about, I'd say, the first 15 minutes or so, just to make sure that you're comfortable with everything that's happening, especially if it's your very first time ever getting a colonic. And so, it's almost like having someone sort of watch you go into the bathroom. So definitely weird. But in other sessions after that, since she knew all the settings, she knew everything, she didn't actually stay in the room with me longer than just having to put the, tube inside. And she would just say, just call out whenever you need me. And I never really did, and she would check in on me once in a while, but it was just for like a few seconds just to say, hey, is everything okay? And I would say yes, and then she would leave. So definitely the first session is really awkward because, she's there with you because she wants to make sure everything is okay, that you're comfortable, and that you know and understand what's happening, and to see if you have any questions about the process. So the process actually lasts for about an hour. I think that she said some people can't stand it more than an hour and ask to have it removed sooner. And I can actually see why, because you are constantly, pushing out waste. So it can get kind of intense. For me, an hour was fine. And I probably wouldn't have liked going longer, but it was just the right amount of time for me. And it's kind of funny because she did have a male client say, oh, this must be what it's like to be, giving birth to a baby. And no, I would say I've had 2 children. I've, given birth twice, and yeah, it's not. It's definitely not. You cannot compare the two. But I can see why people would think that, because you are constantly pushing. So another thing that was interesting was I asked her, when she first placed the tube, it didn't go in very far. And I asked her, does that tube ever fall out? And she said, no, it would never fall out. The only time it would ever fall out is if there's a really large waste that's coming out, but it's extremely rare. So another thing I did with this particular clinic was I ended up going through a 4-day cleanse. And it was really interesting because a lot of colonic places, they offer different cleanses, and there's all these different types. It was definitely very intense. I ended up going through the cleanse twice with her, and I just felt so much cleaner afterwards. And it's kind of funny because this was a while ago, just before the pandemic actually. So the last time I did it with her was like March 2020. And I was looking back at text messages back and forth from me and her, and I ended up writing her a text message at one point, and I basically said, wow, this is really amazing. I love this cleanse, and I can already feel my midsection shrinking. So I actually really liked the cleanse that I did with her. It ended up getting a lot of gunk out of my system. I do feel like it made a huge difference. I don't think you necessarily have to go through a cleanse though. If you're someone like me that just loves to eat a lot of carbs, a lot of breads, a lot of pastas, snacks, candy, I think colonics can be very effective in cutting down the cravings. For me, I was really surprised, and I couldn't believe that the cravings for all of these types of foods just stopped. And this is something that's really crucial for weight loss and for body toning. They say that weight loss is 20% exercise and 80% diet. So if you find a way to cut down on eating unhealthy foods, you're 80% of the way there in meeting your goals to weight loss. So the only thing that I will say about colonics that is a negative thing, at least for me, was the fact that I was prone to hemorrhoids at that point. After my second pregnancy, I had never had hemorrhoids ever in my life until my second pregnancy, my pregnancy with my daughter. And so once I started doing colonics, I noticed that my hemorrhoids started flaring up, and it didn't happen in the beginning. I've had many colonics, and I would say probably after about half a dozen of them, that's when I started really noticing them. And so I ended up realizing, okay, I need to pay attention to this because it did get very painful, and it was really hard to, continue with a colonic regimen with hemorrhoids, having to deal with that. And then lastly, the cost of the procedure, it really depends on where you live. So I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I did get a package deal. So it was like 10 for $100 per session. So it's really gonna depend on where you live and who you go to. But I do recommend that you talk to the person that's doing the colonic beforehand, get an idea of the experience that person has, and make sure that they have an understanding of your goals when you're doing the colonics, and that way they can really recommend a good regimen along the way, and other things that you can do aside from the colonic to help you on your journey. So thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye for now.